House of Pache. Book of Sariya. Our lore has awakened. Prologue, Chapter 1. The Strigoi's Hunger. Like, comment, subscribe, buy me a coffee. Book available on Amazon.
Fark notices my faraway look and furrowed brow. He leans in. Oi, what's gotten into that pretty little head of yours, eh, girl? His rough Northlands accent slices through my pondering, dragging me back to reality. Ain't been right since that last stop, no siree. I force a shaky laugh, trying to brush off the ridiculous notion tightening my chest. A silly fear is all. But I can't shake the thought that man who lent a hand. I trail off, suddenly aware of the other passengers, listening intently. Lowering my voice for only Fark to hear, I continue. He seemed rather unholy, unnatural. Fark pales, eyes going wide as gravestones. He leans even closer, spittle flying as he hisses. You keep that sort of rot to yourself, you hear? He jabs a finger at me, ignoring the other's stares. Even John about the undead brings bad luck down on us all, curses and whatnot. A Strigoi has the twisted, unnatural form of a man, pointed ears like a goblin's, black eyes and soulless, a brow heavy and sloping. Yet it wields the unholy strength of a demon, craving the warm, pulsing flesh of the living. Of course, these undead horrors exist only in the vilest folklore and most disturbing fictions. Passed down through the ages from ancestor to ancestor, using these terrors to scare us into behaving. Surely, no one has truly witnessed their unholy existence. No brave soul has ever dragged a Strigoi's desiccated corpse before the disbelieving crowd as proof of the monster's reality. They do not roam freely for all to see, or so the legends claim. Near impossible to notice, hiding in plain sight unless they want to be seen. You'd never know they were in your presence, let alone by your side. Just tales that could never happen, as it is an unsavory myth, right? Yet the cloaked stranger who helped fix our coach wheel still haunts my thoughts, like a bad dream that lingers into my waking world. Why did he so determinedly hide his face, obscuring it with a deep hood and swiftly turned away? Those hollow, lifeless eyes I caught a glimpse of, could they have belonged to one of the undead? The memory of what I think I saw sends a slither of ice through my veins. A cry shatters the tense air like a thunder.
Whoa! Whoa there!
The coachman's rained shouts are followed by the screech of abused iron brakes as our conveyance shudders to a bone-rattling halt. The horses whinny and stamp in protest at the sudden stop, screams echoing through the shadowy forest around us. Fark throws open the door before I can ask, disappearing into the gloom. I open my mouth, but the words die on my lips as a guard approaches urgently. His wild eyes are visibly on high alert, swiveling his head frantically in case of the sudden need to defend himself. You lot seen Parchet or Cloven? The guard's voice is high and reedy with panic, sounding almost like a child's. The two of them are gone, vanished, without a bleedin' trace. They say they were taken by the forest. The other passengers shake their heads slowly, exchanging worried glances in the cramped cabin. Fark's two closest friends are nowhere to be found amongst our traveling company. An icy fist clenches around my heart as Fark returns, face drained of color, lips pressed into a tight line. He slams the door behind him with a booming crash that makes us all jump, eyes open wide as a cornered animal's. His next words are practically growled through clenched teeth, the rough Northlands accent becoming more pronounced. This ain't no jape, no prank, you hear me? Fark draws the lock shut with a clatter of metal, sealing us in against whatever threat lurks outside. Need you to tell me exactly what you saw. Every last detail. His gaze bores into me, unblinking and intense. I shrink back against the wood wall, mouth working soundlessly for a moment as I feel the weight of the other's stares. His eyes, I finally stammer, unable to meet Fark's piercing gaze. They were hollow and black, like they drank in all light, staring not at me but through me. A violent shiver racks my body at the recollection, and I tug my shawl tighter in the chill night air. Fark's broad chest rises and falls rapidly, his breath becoming heavier and heavier of exertion, like a rabid animal. It's come for me. Over and over he repeats those chilling words under his breath, like a blasphemous prayer. Fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. He scours the interior, slamming his palms against the wooden slats as if hoping to uncover a hidden escape hatch or trap door that doesn't exist. The musty air thickens with our shared disbelieving fear, becoming a choking miasma. What stalks us in this gnarled, lightless forest? What unholy evil have we roused through mere utterance of its name? The silence stretches on, taut as a bowstring as we all avoid each other's eyes. Somewhere outside, a branch snaps underfoot, making us all jump. It's come for me.
Next, Chapter 2. Hours earlier. Buy me a coffee. Support me and the channel to create more content. Go to the link in the description. House of Pache. Book of Sariya. Chapter 2. Hours earlier. Like, comment, subscribe. Buy me a coffee. Book available on Amazon.
I saw it. The figure who haunts the shadows, the subject of the cautionary tales our fathers told at bedtime to ensure we slept peacefully. As children, these stories portrayed him as a protector from the fears conjured by our overactive bedtime imaginations. As we aged, the narratives took on a more sinister tone, filled with horror and dread, warning us never to disobey the laws of God. For those who transgressed, his judgment would be swift and merciless. Homes set ablaze, men and women ripped from their slumbers, disappearing forever into the inky blackness without a single witness left behind. Entire clans of tyrants struck down mid-plunder, none surviving to describe the force that descended upon them. To some, he is an avenging angel, a monster that crawls the night, hunting evil. They can smell it seep from our pores. Maybe the air around would grow thick and oppressive, laden with a scent that defied natural explanation. No one knows, but it's said, the more transgressions, the heavier the smell, and the easier you are to find. To others, he is death itself, Erebus, the Reaper, as some call him. I had lived an upright life, hoping never to cross paths with such an entity. But fate, it seems, is inescapable. I saw him. The memory is seared into my mind, that bitter cold winter morning when the world seemed entombed in ice. My ragged breaths puffed out in frozen clouds as the frigid air burned my nostrils. The pristine snow blanketed the forest in a thick, smothering silence, undisturbed by human footprints along the roadside. Each crystalline flake glistened like diamonds in the pale sunset light, as if nature itself had adorned the scene with a million tiny jewels. Our theater company was traveling from the Highlands to Masona, having just completed a successful run of performances. We were eager to descend from the biting mountain air to more temperate climates, The impresarios had crammed us into the transport carriages like sardines, sparing no expense to maximize profits. So it came as no surprise that one of the lead coaches broke down later in the day. The crack of a broken wooden wheel echoed through the frozen silence like a gunshot. We were forced to a halt, our breath billowing around us as we shivered in the biting cold. The women huddled together for warmth while the men set to repairing the damage. Restless and eager to get the blood flowing again, I ventured out to stretch my legs and check on their progress. As I approached the crippled carriage, the men were backing away, making room for a solitary cloaked figure who had stopped to offer his aid. Laughter and grateful chatter soon filled the air once more. We were performers, not cartwrights. The stranger had the wheel repaired in a trice, his deft movements never faltering despite the bulky gloves muffling his hands. Relief came over the group, knowing our journey would soon resume. Pleased with the news, I stepped away from the group, needing to draw a few deep breaths of the crisp, pine-scented air before returning to the stuffy confines of the carriage. As the men dispersed, it appeared the repairs were finally finished, when Fark's voice rang out, "Sariya!" flashing that disarming grin. "Hurry back. We must get in our carriage. The coachmen are eager to get moving again." Fark caught up to me, draping an arm around my shoulders in a charming attempt to share his warmth on our walk back. He was such a shameless flirt that all the women in the company fawned over him like an enchantment. Why I never fell under his spell remains a mystery to this day. He seemed to possess it all: rugged good looks, confidence in spades, even worked one of the higher positions in the troupe. Leaning in as if to share a secret, Fark lowered his voice to an intimate murmur, his tone taking on that unmistakable air of charisma that made my pulse quicken despite my best efforts. "You know you're my favorite out on that stage. The lead may be Villain, but when you're out there, all eyes are fixed on you, love." I replied with a polite giggle, flattered despite myself even as I batted away the familiar flutter of attraction. "We all know that's not true, Fark." "Oh, but it is." He chuckled, that spark of conviction dancing in his eyes. "Next time, take a look out at the audience when you're performing, and you'll see every enraptured gaze drinking you in." Our flirtatious banter was diverted by someone that hurried past, forcefully shoving between us with little care. Instinctively, we both turned to see who had been so careless in the crowded road. "Apologies," a slow, rumbling voice, like mountain thunder, intoned. What happened after this run-in forever changed my perception of this world.
Next, Chapter 3, Awoken from the Underworld. Buy me a coffee. Support me and the channel to create more content. Go to the link in the description. House of Pache. Book of Sariya. Chapter 3, Awoken from the Underworld. Like, comment, subscribe, buy me a coffee. Book available on Amazon.
"Sariya, Sariya, lass." A small, soft hand clasps mine, startling me from the waking nightmare replaying endlessly behind my eyes. "Sariya?" Lady Clara's lyrical Highlands brogue finally pierces the fog. "It's been an hour at least, and you've not uttered a single word, hen. You're as pale as the shroud, and shaken like a wee lamb." I blink rapidly, glancing around at the circle of concerned faces, studying me with a mixture of confusion and trepidation. Had an hour truly slipped past in that endless reverie? I was safe in the carriage as it carried on its descent to Masona. Yes, well, I swallow hard, my throat as dry as ash, as I force a tremulous smile. "I'm all right, truly. I was just Lost in thought about the last show is all. Lady Clara's expression softens, the tension easing from her shoulders as my feigned calm seems to convince her, for now. It were amazing, that's the truth. We were hoping to run some lines and practice steps here shortly, if you'd care to join us. Oh yes, of course. The words tumble out too quickly. That desperate need to appear unaffected ringing hollow even to my own ears. Let me just get a drink and I'll join you directly. The padded benches lining the walls, leaving an open walkway down the center. I rise on shaky legs, needing to put distance between myself and the others' probing gazes as I make my way towards the water barrel at the rear. I reach for a cup with a trembling hand. Every one of my movements felt loud in the hushed cabin, but another larger palm beats me to it, those well-cared-for fingers wrapping around the vessel with easy confidence. Here, let me get that for you, darling. Fark swoops in, flashing that roguish grin that makes my pulse quicken despite my disquiet. He fills the wooden cup from the barrel, the sloshing water almost melodic compared to the thunderous pounding of my heart. A second cup is filled, and he offers it up in a playful toast, that spark of mischief dancing in his eyes. I know it's only water, he chuckles, the rough Northland burr of his voice like gravel under the wheels. But here's to our health, and to the radiant beauty who graces our humble stage each night. He is so kind, so disarmingly charming despite his rough-hewn edges. I can't help but wonder if his flirtations are merely a force of habit for him to lay on such shameless flattery. Same engaging advances, always a different lady, each and every night. Why would he, one of the company's most acclaimed performers, take such obvious interest in a supporting player like me all of the sudden? We both drink, and I try not to grimace at the stale, slightly bitter tang now on my tongue. Closing my eyes, I took a large gulp from my cup, hoping to wash the poignant taste down. Maybe it would help to rid my racing thoughts. To my dismay, it was Fark's burst into a curious laughter when he looked up from his cup and found my mangled, disgruntled face. Lowering my now cup, I meet his teasing eyes. My apologies, do I amuse you? I said playfully. My crinkled face softened into a defeated smirk. Does your drink not taste utterly vile also? I question in disbelief. Lifting his mug, he inspects it carefully. We share a laugh as he shrugged. Now that you mention it, the water must be going foul after so many days on the road, Fark responds. Just then a heavy jolt rocks the carriage, sending me stumbling into Fark's arms with a startled cry. He catches me easily, pulling me into a firm embrace to steady us both. Are you all right there, love? He murmurs, our faces suddenly perilously close, his warm breath fanning across my cheek. Yes, thank you. I swallow hard, unable to tear my gaze from his eyes. And you saved my drink, even if it does taste off. Several more bone-jarring bumps and jolts follow in rapid succession as the carriage's wheels encounter ruts or fallen branches in the road. Fark's arms tighten around me, pulling me against his frame as he leans us back against the wall, shielding me from the violent rocking with his own body. When the bumps finally subside, we remain locked in that intimate embrace a moment longer than propriety allows. I don't want to be the first to pull away. It feels safe in his arms. I can almost forget the terror I glimpsed on that lonely road. Well, almost. Eventually, I disentangle, putting a proper distance between us. Are you truly all right, Hen? Fark's voice has taken on a softer tone, barely above an intimate murmur as those eyes study me with surprising intensity. Not from the bumps, I mean. Seems there's a shadow over that pretty head of yours. A darkness, even. I meet his gaze, feeling the blood drain from my face anew, as the dread coiled within me rears its head like a serpent, poised to strike. How can I give voice to the darkness gnawing at my mind without sounding utterly mad, without calling down evil's gaze upon us once more. Do you... Trying to speak, but no sound emerges. I try again. Do you believe in demons, Fark? My nose crinkled up as I slowly shook my head in embarrassment. He arches an eyebrow, clearly taken aback by the question as his lips quirk in a hint of a smile, as if waiting for the punchline to a joke. Demons? You mean like spirit demons, lass? Ghosts and such? I suppose. I glance away, unable to hold that penetrating stare as I gather my nerves to give voice to the darkness coiling within me. When I finally look back, my expression is solemn, deadly serious. I don't want there to be any confusion, any hint that I'm merely jesting or allowing my imagination to run wild with what I am about to say. More like witches? Or the undead? A strigoi. The blood drains from Fark's face as the weight of my words settles over him like a death shroud. A strigoi, one of the dreaded undead, twisted perversions of humanity said to possess demonic strength and an insatiable hunger for living flesh and blood. Mere folklore, the subject of lurid tales meant to frighten men into obedience, and yet the conviction in my voice brooks no argument, no rationalization. Did you see something, Sariya? Fark's voice has dropped to a hoarse whisper, his brow furrowed with concern and perhaps the barest flicker of fear. You haven't seemed yourself since that last stop. That's the truth of it. I think... Holding back the words in my throat like shards of broken glass, but I force them out in a breathless rush. I think I saw one. A strigoi, walking among us, fixing the wheel as a ruse to get closer. Fark leans away, processing what I had just said. Maybe he was looking for a smile from me to tell him I was only joking, so I continued to tell him what I had seen before coming inside. It started off when the man that fixed our wheel bumped into us on our way back from the carriage.
Next, Chapter 4, The Run-In. Buy me a coffee. Support me and the channel to create more content. Go to the link in the description. House of Pache. Book of Sariya. Chapter 4, The Run-In. Like, comment, subscribe, buy me a coffee. Book available on Amazon.
Apologies. A slow rumbling voice like mountain thunder intoned. It was the cloaked stranger who had fixed the wheel. The path was clogged with our entire company making their way back to the carriages. I could hear in the distance from behind, before the rude encounter with us, his offering of a murmured, "Pardon me," while bumping into those returning as he wove through the throng. Thinking back on it, you would think it was intentional, but paid it little mind, too engrossed in my conversation with Fark and the warmth of his arm around me. At least, until he barged directly between us, his bulky frame slamming into our shoulders with enough force to make me stumble. Despite the jostling crowd, I found my gaze inexplicably drawn to his hooded face as he turned back towards us. Our eyes met, and what I saw there drained the blood from my face. At first, I could have sworn his eyes were a soft, pale blue, but as our gazes locked, they transformed into something else. Something sinister. The pale hue was devoured in an instant by a consuming, soulless blackness that seemed to spread like inky tendrils, swallowing any trace of color or light. Those twin voids bored into me, their emptiness more unsettling than any abyss of endless darkness. As if summoned by the encounter, a large raven suddenly appeared, perching on a nearby branch. Its obsidian eyes seemed to mirror the stranger's gaze, watching us intently. The bird's presence felt like a mark, an omen of something sinister to come. My heart stuttered in my chest, then kicked into a panicked gallop as his glance shifted to Fark for the briefest moment, before snapping back to impale me with that soulless stare. In that moment, I felt I could see a transformation into nothing but the cold, dispassionate hunger of something ancient, evil, utterly devoid of warmth, mercy, or any semblance of humanity. The stranger froze as Fark gathered, then grabbed me by the side to straighten me up to continue our walk. As we passed him, I could see his breath condensing heavier puffs of vapor in the cold air as he seemed to curl in on himself, hunching over a bit like a wounded animal. I could have sworn those unholy eyes never left mine, searing into me despite his posture of apparent agony or illness. I found myself stumbling backwards, my hand clutching Fark's waist as he pulled me along, putting distance between us and that waking nightmare. I could not look away, sensing an attack could come at any moment. After several paces, I finally tore my gaze away, fixing it on the blessed sight of our carriage waiting ahead.
Caw! Caw!
The raven flew off as we recovered and came closer to the carriage. After what felt like a mountain of ascending steps to the door, I stopped to find the man slowly disappearing from view with his hand held over his stomach. "Did you see that?" I asked fearfully, my voice barely above a whisper. I heard a sharp caw echo behind us. We both turned to look towards the sound of rustling feathers and the soft whoosh of displaced air. The crow had followed, its wings creating small eddies in the chilly atmosphere as it descended. With a barely audible thump and a light scrape of its talons from landing on the top of our carriage, it created a dark silhouette, standing stark against the fading light, its feathers settled into place with a gentle ruffle. The bird's presence seemed to make the air around us heavier, more oppressive. It watched us with those unblinking eyes, a silent witness to the unsettling encounter, as if it had come to listen in to what we were saying. The soft creaking of the carriage under its slight weight only emphasized the eerie silence that had fallen over us. Fark arched an eyebrow, that infuriatingly casual grin playing over his lips. He was unaware of his surroundings and clearly was not seeing what I was. "Yes, I saw that. The daft bugger should slow down before he hurts someone." Fark turned back, raising his voice to address the cloaked figure walking behind another coach in the distance. "Be careful where you're walking, mate. Someone could get seriously hurt." Though the stranger seemed to dwarf Fark in size, my friend clearly felt emboldened by the presence of our entire theater company surrounding us, with its set of guards, performers, and drivers ready to respond to any provocation. He had an entire troupe at his back, ready to answer any threat. "No!" I insisted, struggling to keep my voice steady against the tremor of dread lacing it. "Did you see his face?" Fark's bravado slipped a notch as confusion crept over his features, his arm falling away from my shoulders. No, I didn't get a good look at him under that cloak. Why?" The words tumbled from my lips in a breathless rush. "It didn't seem right or natural. I don't like what I think I saw." His forehead knit together as he studied my expression, clearly taken aback by the naked fear written there. "That's strange. What was it? I didn't notice anything before when he was helping with the wheel. I would have seen something amiss then, no?" "Yes, I suppose you would have," I murmured, more to myself than him as I replayed the horrific vision. wondering if my eyes had played tricks. Entering our carriage, I quickly clambered inside, pulling the door shut behind me with a sense of finality, as if I were barring entry to something profane. Opening a wooden window, I tried to steal one last glance for the cloaked stranger to ensure his departure, and it seemed he had vanished, swallowed by the gnarled forest. I slumped back in the padded bench, shivering uncontrollably from the cold, or was it the terrifying encounter? The dread coiled within me like a nest of icy serpents, their scales slithering beneath my skin as their venomous chill seeped into my core. No matter how the other passengers laughed and joked around me, their voices were muffled and distant, drowned out by the thunderous pounding of my heart. I fell into this trance of thought. Those eyes would be forever seared into my memory, branding the image into my mind's eye like the mark of a white-hot iron. No matter how I tried to rationalize what I'd seen, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had encountered a profane creature, an abomination, an ancient hellspawn that should never have been roused, lest its insatiable hunger be turned upon us. I continued to ponder, heavier and heavier, until all sounds drowned sinking into the deep. The others remained oblivious, offering jovial thanks and clapping the stranger on the back, their mirth like nails on a chalkboard to my ringing ears. Couldn't they sense the miasma of dread? The electric charge in the air that raised the fine hairs on my nape? I could scarcely breathe, frozen in primal terror as that empty gaze seemed to bore into my very soul, weighing it against whatever cosmic scales he carried. What sins, either recent or long buried, had brought this dark omen into our midst? Whose transgressions were so grievous as to invite death's scrutiny? The cloaked figure melted back into hiding like a revenant returning to its crypt. Even so, I knew better than to let my gaze linger over long. The death omen had been delivered. This is where I found myself awoken by Lady Clara, from a long days of piecing together all the stories of these creatures that I am beginning to believe actually roam among us. My last hope to calm my fear of what I witnessed rested with how Fark would respond to what I think I saw.
Next, Chapter 5, Grasping to a Hope. Buy me a coffee. Support me and the channel to create more content. Go to the link in the description. House of Pache. Book of Sariya. Chapter 5, Grasping to a Hope. Like, comment, subscribe, buy me a coffee. Book available on Amazon.
Fark is a witty man and a charmer. If anyone can convince me of these silly thoughts and bring me back to earth, he could do it. Fark recoils as if I'd slapped him, his eyes surprised. "Are you serious, lass? You must keep this quiet, you hear." He glances around the cabin as if expecting the others to have overheard, his voice dropping even lower with urgency. "Even speaking of the undead brings ill fortune, whether they exist or no. You'll bring their gaze down upon us all with that talk."
Whoa! Whoa there!
The coachman's shout rings out, followed by a chorus of echoing cries, as the carriage lurches to a jarring halt, sending Fark and I crashing into the front wall with bone-rattling force.
Hold! Hold on, ye bastards!
The driver's calls continue, echoing through the dark forest like the anguished screams of the damned, as the other carriages grind to a stop behind us, one by one. What happened? What could have caused such an urgent stop? Fark stands quickly and throws open the door, the roar of raging flames
cover the hillside. The shrill cries of unbridled terror, the bestial shouts and bellows
of whatever creatures of the damned hunt us. A guard stands below, his face frantic and drawn, eyes filled with naked fear.
"Tell everyone to stay inside," he shouts up at us, his voice reedy with panic. "And bar the doors. Do not open, for any reason."
"What is it?" Bach demands, his earlier bravado vanishing like a snuffed candle flame as he takes in the guard's abject terror. "What's happened?" The guard hesitates, glancing over his shoulder into the nightmare beyond, before answering loudly in a hoarse rasp. "I'm not sure. Appears to be a large fire that's blocked the path ahead. But that's not all." He trails off, his eyes losing focus for a moment, as his face contorts in an expression of purest dread. Just take a seat and remain in the carriage. Bar the doors and do not open them for any reason. We'll try to find an alternate road and be on our way shortly." Fark slams the door shut, his face ashen as he turns to address the rest of us, his voice wavering despite his obvious efforts to project calm. "Everyone remain in the carriage and bar the doors. There's a fire blocking the path ahead. We'll be continuing on shortly." But as his stare meets mine, I see the mask slip. That veneer of confidence cracking like ice over a frozen lake. He can read the naked terror etched on my features. I don't have to say a word. He knows this is something far worse than a simple roadblock or wildfire. Fark moves to my side, grabbing my arms and rubbing them vigorously, as if to instill warmth, though his own hands are as cold as the grave. "It's only a small fire, nothing more," he tries to reassure me, but the words ring as hollow as the toneless bellow of a corpse, devoid of any conviction. Instead of offering comfort, his touch leaves me paralyzed with dread. I feel frozen, petrified, as if I can sense the presence lurking just beyond the tree line, and has turned its baleful gaze upon us at last. Was it me he was coming for? The thought makes my stomach flip, my breaths coming in ragged gasps of panic. "Slow, deep breaths, lass," Fark coaches, pulling me into another embrace, only I feel it was not for my comfort this time. He was trying to calm himself. Even still, it was the only anchor against the rising tide of terror threatening to sweep me away. "Just breathe nice and slow now. I'm here, I've got you." We find a pair of open bench seats, and I try to follow his soothing murmurs, forcing air into my constricted lungs as I mouth a silent prayer to whatever divine forces might hear my plea. But it's no use. Slam! A crash from outside the front of the caravan shatters what little calm I'd mustered. Blood-curdling screams pierce the night, the terrified wails of women echoing through the forest like the cries of the damned being dragged into the Stygian pits of the underworld. My breath catches in my throat as every muscle goes rigid, bracing for what? For death itself to shatter the flimsy barrier of wood separating us from the encroaching nightmare? I can't remain seated a moment longer, can't cower in this coffin on wheels and await my fate. I surge to my feet, but Fark's grip locks around my shoulders, holding me in place with surprising strength as he shakes his head urgently. "Sit!" he orders in a tone I've never heard from him before. Not a request, but a command laced with grim authority. "I'll go out and see what's happening, but you need to stay here where it's safe. You hear me?" The door crashes open, and Fark slips outside, slamming the door behind him to muffle the sounds, but not nearly enough to drown out the roar of the fire or the anguished cries echoing endlessly through the shadowed wood. Time stood still, but it was only a moment later the screams slowly die away.
Weeping continues. A haunting keening like the lamentations of mourners over fresh graves. What's happening out there? This question repeats in our carriage.
Then the shouts of men from outside growing louder as they seem to move from carriage to carriage down the line, their calls indistinct but carrying a clear tone of fear and desperation.
Anyone?
The words are muffled, indistinct at first.
Seen?
Closer now, clearer, each syllable like a tombstone lashed across my heart.
Anyone seen Parchet? Or Cloven?
Our door bursts open once more to admit a wild-eyed guard, his gaze sweeping over us all with frantic urgency as he repeats the words louder this time as if by sheer force of volume he can make them untrue.
Has anyone seen Parchet or Cloven?
We can only shake our heads, mute witnesses to some unfathomable horror unfolding beyond these wooden walls.
The two of them are gone, like they were taken by the forest.
The guard turns on his heel and rushes away, the door slamming shut behind him with a dull thud of finality, the sound of the lock sliding into place.
Why are people missing? What's happening out there?
The weeping begins anew, the cries of terrified women echoing. I wish I didn't already know, in the deepest chambers of my heart, that the dread forces of darkness had finally come for us. That the nightmare was no longer confined to mere tales spun by the fireside to chill the blood. This was no dream. And this time, there would be no waking from it before the Strigoi claimed its pound of flesh. When or will Fark return?
Next, and final chapter. Chapter 6. It's come for me. Buy me a coffee. Support me and the channel to create more content. Go to the link in the description. House of Pache. Book of Sariya. Chapter 6. It's come for me. Like, comment, subscribe, buy me a coffee. Book available on Amazon.
I felt I was going to claw my own skin off, rip fistfuls of hair from my scalp, anything to relieve the suffocating anxiety building inside me like a damned rising from its crypt. I could not remain seated a moment longer, could not cower in this wooden coffin while Fark was out there, thrust into the heart of the nightmare. I had to get out, had to see with my own eyes the death that awaited for me. Flinging open the carriage door, the cold night air hitting me like a slap as the roar and crackle of the inferno up ahead assaulted my senses. The flames danced, as if to welcome us to Hell's Gate, casting an orange glow over the freshly fallen snow and lighting the path ahead. The air was thick, filled with smoke and the acrid stench of burning foliage. Each ragged breath seared my lungs, but the icy burn helped ground me, clearing my head of the panicked fog, if only for a moment. I took a few tentative steps forward, my boots crunching in the crisp snow. That's when I saw it. A message, seemingly carved into the very earth itself. The letters etched deeply into the pristine white blanket covering the hillside ahead. It had to be recent work. We'd been traveling through fresh snowfall for days. But as I drew closer, squinting against the wavering light of the flames, the terrible meaning became clear. Judizio. The word judizio was like a blade of ice through my heart, freezing the blood. The tales from my childhood, the cautionary stories meant to keep us from straying, came flooding back. The dread omens, the signs that he was coming, they were all here, unfolding before my eyes. Judizio,
The word known by all as judgment. It is written for all to see on every entrance at every church. Inscribed in our minds that judicatio will come to all. What will be the judgment of this night? There it was again. The raven soared through the air, its sleek black wings slicing effortlessly against the backdrop of flickering flames. As it approached the fire, the heat shimmered in the air, distorting the world around it. This could not be happening. Not to me. Not in this age of enlightenment and reason. Such evils belonged in the realm of folklore, not the waking world. The crackling flames cast eerie, shifting shadows that seemed to twist and writhe in the darkness, their dance both mesmerizing and unsettling. The scent of smoke hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the crisp aroma of pine, a potent reminder of the wild and untamed nature of the forest. I stood still, halting on the weathered, snow-covered road. The fading light of the early sunset casts long, eerie shadows across the forest floor, the skeletal fingers of pine and aspen trees stretching out like grasping specters. As the distant flicker of firelight moved the shadows, it beckoned me with its warm, inviting glow. My curiosity drove me towards the source of the illumination, yet as I drew nearer, I felt uneasy. Sound muted, other than the thump of my heart, and the breath misting in the cold night air from my mouth. There were no snow tracks that led to the inscripted fire. Snow was pristine and untouched all along the hillside. How was this fire etched into the treeless mount? Focusing in silence, I felt a visceral sense that screamed of unseen dangers lurking in the shadows behind me. I turned my gaze towards the forest, where I bore a weight of evil watching from the depths of the forest. Instincts screamed to run back to the carriage, when amidst the dense tangle of pine and aspen, a pair of luminous blue eyes flashed like sapphires in the darkness. Their piercing gaze fixated upon me with an intensity that imploded my world of transgressions, crushing me in a wreckage of my own making. For a heartbeat, time froze as we locked eyes. A silent understanding passed between us. But as quickly as they appeared, the eyes vanished, swallowed by the depths of the forest as if they were never there. "Sariya!" A hand seized my shoulder, wrenching me around to face its owner. Fark's eyes were wild, his chest heaving with exertion or fear. I couldn't tell which.
Sariya! We need to get back to the carriage now.
His voice, disturbed by the deep breaths of exhaustion and coughing of inhaling smoke-filled air. He continued sprinting to the carriage. I could only stand there, petrified, my mind utterly blank, as the shock of what I'd seen threatened to overwhelm me. Fark seemed to realize I wasn't going to move under my own power. He turned and began sprinting back towards our battered conveyance, only to whirl back when he realized I wasn't following.
Now, Sariya!
He bellowed, the command finally shocking me from my stupor. I ran, my feet finding ground in the snow more by luck than conscious effort. I ran as if the hounds of hell itself nipped at my heels, my ragged breaths tearing at my throat, tears of panic and exertion streaming from my eyes. I couldn't look back, couldn't take my gaze from the blessed sight of the carriage ahead and Fark silhouetted in its open doorway like a sentry against the night. Fark was the last fragile barrier against the encroaching darkness. If I could just reach him. "Hurry, Sariya! Get in quickly!" he urged, reaching out to pull me up the steps and into the dubious sanctuary of the carriage interior. The moment my boots crossed the threshold, I threw my feet forward, kicking them to my front, as if something was going to swipe for my ankles to pull me down and back out from the carriage. Fark slammed the door and threw the bolt, checking it twice to ensure it was properly secured, before sagging back against the wall, huffing deeply to catch his breath. He grabbed me then, pulling me down onto one of the benches across from him, gripping my shoulders almost painfully as I continued to tremble and weep with delayed shock. "Please," I begged between ragged gasps. "Please tell me nothing is wrong. Please, Fark." But he could see it in my eyes. I knew the truth. All the tales of judgment and reckoning, of the dreaded forces that culled the wicked to purge their taint from the world, was here. Parchette and Cloven were missing. Fark's dearest friends, the two men who had been with him through every hardship and adventure. And now they were gone, vanished into the night like curls of smoke on the wind, and we both knew how, but why. Fark leaned forward, grabbing my hands, and his eyes bored into me with an intensity I'd never seen, his voice taking on a grim urgency. "I need to know exactly what you saw." The words came out as a defeated, scared fawn that knew his fate was written, more bestial than human. "What did you see out there?" My body started to shake, and I shook my head, fresh tears spilling down my cheeks as I struggled to force the words out against the lump of dread constricting my throat. "I don't know. The man—" I choked out finally. "What man?" Fark demanded. "The man who fixed the wheel." Understanding flickered across Fark's features, swiftly replaced by an expression of purest dread. "What about him? What did you see, Sariya?" My words came haltingly, disjointed between ragged breaths as the memory played out before me. His eyes. I looked up into the man's eyes. I met Fark's gaze, seeing my own horror reflected there as I finally gave voice to the darkness. They were black. Both eyes were hollow and black. Fark released my hands as if I'd burned him, recoiling from me as a shudder ran through his powerful frame. He looked away, squeezing his eyes shut as he began murmuring the same words over and over, his voice a whisper. "He has come for me. He has come for me." I tensed, trying to make sense of his mantra, of who he could possibly mean. The Strigoi. Why? I thought to myself. Fark was still seated, but his gaze roved the interior of the carriage like a caged animal seeking escape, his breath coming in ragged pants of exertion or fear. When his eyes finally met mine again, I saw the truth shining there. A bone-deep weariness, a resignation to a fate he had been running from his entire life. "Who?" I asked, my voice little more than a broken whisper as I reached for his hand once more. "Who has come for you, Fark?" Once finishing the question, a wheezy feeling started to rush in. My thought process began to slow, and my body started to loosen. Suddenly, I was not so panicked and tense. My heart was slowing to a relaxed beat when worlds seemed to be ending outside that door. Everything around me took on a rosier hue, melting away the stress of our troubles in a light, carefree haze. Why was I feeling almost drunk? I have not had a drink other than the bitter, stale water I shared with Fark. My attention focused back to reality with a slightly less frantic tone when Fark gripped my hand tightly, hunching over our joined fingers as he rubbed his thumb over my knuckles. When he spoke again, it was with a rasp of purest dread. "I feel those eyes you described, fixated on me. And I cannot run or hide from it. I can feel it coming for me like my soul is hunted trying to flee. But my body has nowhere to run." Somewhere outside, a branch snaps underfoot, making us all jump. Silence fills the room as our focus shifts to listening for any outside noise. Pounding hearts can be felt with each passing breath. A soft scratch from outside on the roof intensified the moment. The sound of claws digging in, then hopping across to digging through the roof again.
Each step was marked by a delicate hollow scratch, reminiscent of nails gliding over rough wood. The raven seemed to be trying to get in. Fark peers into my eyes for one last time, his teeth grit to try to keep him from speaking his next words, speaking quickly to try and let it all out.
It may not be too late. I wronged too many, and my intentions with you were... Fark shifts and gathers himself, nervously trying to release the words. He repeats, and my intentions with you were... Crash! Something slammed into the carriage with the force of a battering ram. Everything, us, the coach, were lifted up into the air, my head slamming downwards towards the floorboards with stunning force. Then, just as quickly as we ascended, the force pushed us back towards the ground. On the way down, my head was lifted to glance ahead to see a giant hole behind where Fark sat. Only Fark was gone! Slam! The carriage hits the ground. When my vision finally cleared, I could only stare in numb shock at the gaping tear into the carriage's flank. Fark was gone, ripped away into the night, leaving nothing but a smear of crimson against the shattered wood. The carriage continued to rock and shudder, threatening to throw me about like a rag doll until it finally stilled with a bone-jarring crash, one wheel torn free to spin lazily through the snow. I surged to my feet without a thought for my own safety, my mind utterly consumed by one driving need: to find Fark. Stumbling over the debris, I ran out of the ruined conveyance and into the frozen night. "Fark!" I screamed, my voice cracking with desperation as I cast about wildly. "Fark, where are you? Say something!" I ran in dizzying circles, checking beneath our carriage, searching every potential hiding spot, as if he might have merely been thrown clear instead of... No. I refused to entertain that thought. Fark was alive. He had to be. If I could just find him. "Fark!" I wailed again, my voice growing hoarse. My boots skidded in the snow, and I dropped to my knees, clutching the splintered wheel hub to keep from pitching face first into the frozen ground. The fall was from a dizziness that washed over me, my vision swimming as a bone-deep weariness set in. It was that feeling of a sudden drunkenness, only it was much heavier than a shot of rum and taking over quickly. It did not matter. I had to find him. There! Leading away from the wreckage, I saw them. Deep gouges and furrows carved into the freshly fallen snow, as if a body had been dragged towards the tree line. I squinted, forcing my eyes to focus. No footprints visible, other than an eerie story etched into a trail of snow on the ground. My vision was blurring, but I was sure of it. A distant voice was calling out, "Get back to the carriage! It is not safe!" Urging me to return to the carriage, but the words were little more than a droning buzz in my ears. Fark's trail was laid out before me, and I knew I had to follow wherever it led. I surged to my feet, swaying drunkenly for a moment before staggering along the tracks. Each step was leaden, my limbs heavy as if dragging through waist-deep water. Pressing on regardless, I was driven by a force greater than mere self-preservation. Suddenly, that prickling sensation on my skin stopped everything. I could feel its watchful presence, an unseen predator studying me from the shadows as I drew inexorably nearer. Pausing to listen, my senses cleared out all chaos. It was just me and whatever was in those trees. My breath slowed to hear for any sudden movements coming from the thickets. Crunch from the snow came from the bottom of my feet, with the slightest shift in weight. When would it seize its opportunity to come for me? Paused as the seconds ticked, each one feeling like hours. My mind and body became too heavy and threatened to drop me into the snow. Thump. Blanketed by flakes of cold white snow. My body crumbled into the powder unwillingly. Looking up to understand, that's when I saw him. A cloaked figure standing silent vigil between the old pines, as still and unnatural as a statue. Even from this distance, I could make out the massive, motionless bulk at his feet. Fark. Was he dead? The stranger seemed to sense my gaze upon him. Turning, slowly, the silhouette of the forest faced me. Though his features were obscured, I could feel the weight of that soulless stare piercing me like a blade between the ribs, freezing me in place as surely as any spell. A flash of light blue encircled his eyes. If I had blinked, I would have missed it. Startling my fight-or-flight response, it was not enough for me to rise, but enough to see more still forms. I couldn't make out any details, but deep down I knew. Parchette, Cloven, lay limp, thrown onto the back of a huge, dark horse that blended into the night forest. "It's him," I rasped, my lips pulling back in a horrible parody of a smile. As I felt an icy calm descend over me, the final puzzle pieces clicking into place at last. Rolling over on my back, I say again, closing my eyes, readying for a deep sleep, seeing the silhouette of the raven flying over towards the monster in the forest. It's him. The guard who had been calling out finally approached me, his alarmed voice finally penetrating the fog as he glanced to the tree line, looking for some clarifications of what I was saying. His gloved hands reached for my arms to sit me up, readying me to be thrown over his back, my sight bouncing from the waddle of the guardsman on his back, facing the forest as he carried me back to the carriages. It's him. The trees. I was able to squeeze out one last time. There's nothing there, lass, just the forest, that's all. Forget the trees before death catches you out here. But I could only shake my head, letting out a low, keening moan of despair as denial crashed against the walls of my mind like a raging sea. And then, the darkness rose up to claim me, a blessed oblivion to the knowledge that the dread forces of the night were not merely tales to keep children in their beds. This was no dream, no mere nightmare to be woken from with a scream and a pounding heart. This was the cold, eternal reality. And this time, there would be no waking from it. I saw him.
Next book. Book of Sariya. Book available on Amazon. Buy me a coffee. Support me and the channel to create more content. Go to the link in the description. Like, comment, subscribe. House of Pache. Book of Sariya.